Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are calling in from. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Deirdre O'Regan, Senior Director of Recruitment at AMN Healthcare International. I am sitting in for Danielle over the next few months while she goes and has her baby. So hope all is doing well with Danielle. But welcome to Onwards and Upwards. This is one of our favorite shows of the month. We're Immigration Q&A. I am sure we're going to get a lot of questions with the recent Visa Bulletin coming out, and we have a panel of experts that are going to answer all that we can today for you. So please pop your questions in the comment section. We will get to all that we can. But one of our favorite things to do is see where you're all calling in from. So please pop in the chat where you're calling in from. Hi, Paolo, watching from Kuwait. Emmanuel, watching from Ghana. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We have Cindy from Costa Rica. Hello, Samina, calling in from England. Paolo again from Kuwait. So continue to pop in the chat where you are calling in from. And one of our favorite things to do, as I said. Hi, Rokaya, calling in from Lebanon. Okay, and Bill from UK. Thank you, thank you. Lots of representation from the UK today. Love to see that. I'm from Ireland myself, so love to see some people from my part of the world listen in. Hi, Jam, calling in from the Philippines. So we've got a packed agenda today for you all. So thank you again for taking the time to listen in today. Just as a reminder, I know that you don't need one, but just as a reminder, AMN Healthcare International is the only organization that provides both staffing and direct hire opportunities. So I know you all know, but let me repeat that, the only organization that provides both staffing and direct hire opportunities for our nurses. So welcome again. Let's pull up what is to come and we will get started. So we're going to talk about dream jobs. I know that for those of you who have been on Onwards and Upwards before, I'm sure we've got a lot of repeat listeners in today. This is a segment that I do talking about clients that are interviewing pretty quickly, and we choose 2 states to focus on, and I will let you know what those 2 states are shortly. I'm sure the majority of everyone that's on today is very interested in the immigration Q&A. So we do have a panel of experts that are going to be on hand to answer your questions. So make sure you are getting them into the comments and we will answer all we can. And then we have Holly's Clinical Corner. I know that that is a favorite. So Holly will be joining us towards the end of the show with our Clinical Corner. So let's get started with dream jobs. So as you know, wonderful, thank you. So as you all know, we have opportunities across the United States. So if we could pop up that map. So we have opportunities across the United States in both staffing and direct. But today we are going to focus on 2 great states that are interviewing right now for both staffing and direct opportunities. We're going to talk about Georgia, where I currently live, and Illinois. So we are going to start with Georgia and top 3 reasons why you may want to move to live and work in Georgia. So first and foremost, affordable cost of living. That's very important, particularly if you are bringing family with you. It is in the top 10 states where Fortune 500 companies are located. So think about spousal employment opportunities here. And it is rich in cultural diversity. So Georgia, I live in the beautiful, beautiful city of Savannah. But you know, when you think about Georgia, there's so many really large cities and then smaller cities as well. So great state to live in. I moved to Georgia 6 years ago from California and have never regretted that decision. Absolutely love it here. So let's do a quick cost of living comparison. So we use Savannah, Georgia. As I said, myself and my co-host, Michelle, live in the beautiful city of Savannah. It's absolutely gorgeous. But let's compare cost of living through Savannah compared to Los Angeles. So the cost of living is 59% higher in Los Angeles than it is in Savannah. Look at that housing cost, 193% higher. That was one of the main reasons that myself and my husband chose to relocate to Georgia, is because we wanted to buy a home. And we were here just 1 year and we were able to do that. So consider that as you are making your choice on where you want to be here in the US, because that's a key component. Let's compare it to New York. All right, so to live in New York City, it's going to be 146% higher than living in Savannah, Georgia. Look at that housing cost, 544% higher. I can tell you from personal experience, the housing square footage that you get in New York is not going to be comparable to what you get for your money in states like Georgia. Very, very small, lots of apartments. So if you're going to be bringing a family with you, you may want to look at other areas as well. Okay, so let's move on to the reasons why you may want to live and work in Illinois. So again, affordable cost of living outside Chicago. Chicago is going to be a higher cost of living, but it is a vibrant mix of large cities and smaller towns. Chicago is one of my favorite cities to go to. It is so much fun, lots and lots to do. Think of, museums and parks and just beautiful, beautiful city center, just gorgeous. So living in Illinois would allow you the opportunity to visit Chicago quite frequently. Beautiful, beautiful city to visit. Beautiful natural beauty. So Illinois has miles and miles and miles of Lake Michigan shoreline. So think of beautiful landscapes, think of on days off, going to visit those shorelines with your family, just a beautiful, beautiful state. So let's talk about cost of living comparison. Okay, so to live in Springfield, Illinois, which is where our client is located and is interviewing right now, the cost of living is 65% higher than living in Los Angeles, California. Housing costs 190% higher in Los Angeles than in Springfield, Illinois. So let's do a quick comparison here to New York City. All right, so to live in Springfield, Illinois is going to cost, is 155% lower than the cost of living in New York City. Again, drawn to that 539% higher housing costs in New York City. And again, think about what you're getting for your money, particularly if you are bringing a family, you're going to need more space. So you may want to consider options like Georgia and Illinois, who are interviewing right now. So if you have not already applied, get your application in today, AMN Healthcare /international. Our recruitment team is on hand to help you. And I will leave you with, before we get into our immigration Q&A, which I know everybody is very excited about, that the more open you are to location, the faster you're going to find your opportunity. Okay. It is our expert recruiters, our experts in all 50 states, and they can help guide you and help you make the best decision for both yourself and your family. But be open. We're in retrogression right now, which we're going to dive deep into in our next section here. But you've got time. You've got time to make that decision. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to that section. All right. So remember, dream big, dream smart, and choose AMN Healthcare International. Okay. We are going to get my co-host for today in, Michelle Kilkenny. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, hi. Good morning, Dee.
We're both in Savannah today, but I'm at my home office today, and Michelle is in our corporate office. We're normally together. But Michelle, would you like to give a brief introduction? I'm sure many on the call already know who you are, but a brief introduction. Thanks, Michelle.
Well, good morning. It's taking two of us to host instead of Danielle. So, and Danielle, I hope you're watching. Maybe not. Good morning. I'm delighted to be here today. My name is Michelle Kilkenny, the Senior Director of Immigration Licensure and Credentialing at AMN International. I'm an immigrant myself, also came from Ireland 35 years ago and started working in this job 35 years ago. So yes, I have a lot of knowledge back when they weren't any green cards to now where we are looking at visa bulletins every month. And hopefully can answer some of your questions. But we are excited to have you on and with our esteemed attorneys who are joining also.
Absolutely. And I'm sure Michelle is a wealth of knowledge in all things immigration, credentialing, licensure. She's got over 35 years of experience doing this. We always joke with Michelle that sometimes we'd like to live in her head for all of the information that she has. So I'm very, very happy that Michelle was able to join us today. So now let's get our expert attorneys in that are going to be helping answer all of your questions today. So today we are joined by Maria Schneider and Hannah Harris. Thank you both very much. I know that extremely busy individuals and are taking this time to answer as many questions as we can for our audience today. So I'll ask Maria to give a brief introduction, followed by Hannah, and then we'll get this kicked off.
Sure, yeah. As Dee said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Obviously, we see all the countries in the comments. That's always nice to see. I'm a partner attorney here at Musillo and Unkenholt. Probably many of you have seen my business partner, Chris, who's on these calls often. He's actually in Chicago right now at an immigration law conference. So I'm kind of pinch hitting for him. But I've been with the firm about 13 years, so not 35, but hopefully still my knowledge is good and useful, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Maria. Hannah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Harris. I am a business immigration attorney at Corporate Immigration Partners in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I've been working in the business immigration space for about 10 years. Worked for quite a few years first as a paralegal and then moved over and went to law school and became an attorney, and love working with business immigration attorneys and in this space. Mike Hammond is a partner at my firm who I'm filling in for today, who's also a frequent flyer on these calls. So happy to be here and hopefully can shed some light on some questions that you guys have.
Thank you so much to both of you. Wow, what a wealth of knowledge we have here today. The questions are coming in fast and furious. We are going to do our very best to get to as many as we can. But we all know the Visa Bulletin came out a week ago. We know what happened. We retrogressed to December 1st, 2021. But just a brief reminder for those of you who haven't been in retrogression before that are joining this call. One of our very close friends, Dr. Paul, had a video that he created a couple of years back on his experience with retrogression and what you can do in a positive way during retrogression to advance your process for when the dates become current, or just keep yourself motivated. So if we can pull up Dr. Paul's video and then we'll get right into Q&A.
As someone who survived retrogression, I had to wait almost 10 years to get to the United States. Abandoned by employer back in 2014 when I was already current. By the way, my priority is 2008. Abandoned by my employer in 2014. Got recaptured 2015. When I got recaptured, there was a retrogression again for several years back. Put me back another 2 years, almost 10 years to get here and live the American dream, the life that I wanted. Guys, do not stop with what you're doing. I have three key takeaways for you guys, for you nurses all over the world that are watching us today. The first one is continue with what you are doing, with the process that you are doing, whether it is filing I-140, whether it is getting documentary qualified, whether taking your IELTS, reviewing for the NCLEX, or doing your visa screen, or whatever processes your employers or your lawyers are requiring from you. Keep doing that. You want all of them in place for when the retrogression moves and it's time for you to be interviewed. You want all of them in place because the visa is numerically limited. Retrogression is a cycle. It happens. It will happen. It will keep happening. The first one that gets into the consul's desk with all their papers in gets to go to the United States first. Number two, do not make life-changing decisions until you have your visa. Don't sell your houses. A lot of people made this mistake. I've been an admin for 4 years. I've been a nurse here in the States for 6. I survived retrogression for 10 years. Heard people sold their houses, quit their jobs, or quit their kids' school, and then ending up having to have retrogression, and now they don't have visa because they're retrogressed for a year. Don't do that. Wait for your visa on your hand, and you have a flight to the United States before you make any life-changing decisions. And the last one is do something else while waiting. Go to Saudi, go to UK, go to Germany, stay in your country, and improve your nursing skills, get more competent, try another unit and try specialty units, but do something to improve your career. Once you get here, trust me, it will be worth it. If I quit, I would not have lived the American dream that I've always wanted when I was young. So that's it, guys.
Wow, great advice from Dr. Paul, one of our great friends here at AMN International, but great advice. 10 years it took Dr. Paul, and he is thriving here in the US, and it is his mission to help nurses like you who are listening in today, and just great advice. So if we can pull up the Visa Bulletin from last, we've all seen it, but let's just take a look at the graphic. And Hannah, if I may ask you, what made the date go back to 2021?
Sure. So I don't think probably any immigration attorneys are surprised by the dates moving back. Each fiscal year, which one runs from October through September, there's a certain number of visas and green card numbers that are available to be distributed. And so when the government gets really close to hitting that number, they're not allowed to go over the number. That's when retrogression happens, and those priority date cutoff dates are established in the Visa Bulletin. So over the summer, I would say most of us were probably expecting that the dates were either going to stay the same or retrogress. So I would not say that, I'm surprised that they've moved further back. It just means they're getting really close to hitting that number and not having any more visas available to issue this fiscal year. And additionally, in this July Visa Bulletin, the Department of State did leave a note in the comments that it's very possible in August that these dates will either further retrogress or they'll become unavailable. And what that means, if the category changes to unavailable, is there are no more visas that can be issued. So what we look forward to then is in October, when the new fiscal year starts, that's when new visa numbers become available. And so we're expecting there's going to be some movement there, but we don't know exactly what those numbers are going to look like. But that's when we'll probably see, new priority cutoff dates in that EB3 category. But in terms of it moving back this month, that just means they're getting really close to hitting that number that they're not allowed to go over in terms of issuing those available visas and green cards.
Thank you, Hannah. Very helpful. So a couple of things that I heard there, not a surprise. So we're expecting this, and thank you for that explanation of what unavailable means. I see a couple of comments in here asking for that clarification. So Maria, we've got a question here from Big Brother. His date of filing is March 2023, and passport expires in 2025. With retrogression, should he apply for a new passport, or will he be okay?
Yeah, I think if he's able to apply for a new passport, it certainly is not a bad idea. It would be good to go ahead and proactively do that. Just as Dr. Paul was saying on the video, keep moving forward with the process. So make sure you keep your documents active. Make sure you're working. If you don't already have it, you're working towards your visa screen, your NCLEX pass. Whatever the next step is for you. Be thinking sort of 3 moves ahead of where you want to go. So if you're eligible to renew your passport, I don't think that's a bad idea, because it obviously may take some time, but then you'll be prepared to be partnered with a longer passport.
Oh, thank you, Maria. So be safe, not sorry. If you can, apply for that passport so that you've got that time. The last thing you want to do is be disappointed when the dates start moving and your passport is no longer valid. We have a question here from Kristen. What will happen to my interview appointment if my priority date is later than the set date in June 2024 bulletin, I'm an F2B category. Hannah?
So if your priority date is not current in the Visa Bulletin, then you won't be scheduled for an interview. It's possible that the embassy, if they've already assigned a visa number, may continue forward with the interview, but that's going to be specific to the embassy that you're at. But most commonly what we see is that the embassies will cancel the interview if your priority date is no longer current, and then you'll be rescheduled once your priority date becomes current again in the Visa Bulletin.
Thank you, Hannah. So hope that helps you. Michelle, question for you coming in. For those entering on an EB3 visa, does the visa screen need to be valid until the green card is issued?
No, the visa screen needs to be valid at your embassy appointment. If that's what the process, your consular processing, it needs to be valid at the time that you attend your embassy appointment.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So Maria, we have a lot of questions on how long do we think retrogression will last? I know that is a question that we can't, answer 100%, but can you give us your thoughts on how long we think it will last?
Sure. Yeah. So I think Hannah gave a great summary before about, again, the retrogression over the summer is very typical. I know some folks who are maybe newer to the process that, that weren't around before COVID may not know that or understand it. But pre-COVID, there was always retrogression over the summer, just as Hannah was outlining before, because we're heading into the end of the fiscal year. So I agree with her statement before that we hope there will be some forward movement in October when the fiscal year begins again, and there's a fresh batch of visas, a fresh batch of green cards available. What those cutoff dates will be, like Hannah said, we don't know. I think we're anticipating there will always be something like an 18 to 24 month retrogression going forward. And in fact, that probably would have been the case, but for COVID. There's a lot of reasons that we could spend all the time here on the call talking why COVID impacted the Visa Bulletin in a variety of ways that made it current for so long. But that's an abnormality. So now that COVID has passed, we anticipate there will always be some level of retrogression, probably around 18 to 24 months moving forward.
Very helpful. Thank you, Maria. So expect that. You're hearing it from the experts today. And again, key point, it was something that was expected. We expected it. And, AMN International has been navigating retrogression collectively for 50 years. So experts at doing it, and of course, partnering with these expert attorneys who are joining us today to make sure that you get the accurate information, because that's really important. Okay. So Hannah, I have a question here from Albert. He will be processing his British citizenship next year, has not received an update on I-140 filing, but was told it would be filed within 5 to 10 working days from May 22nd. How do I go about it?
So I'm not sure exactly the question you're asking here, but if you're processing your British citizenship, that's something that can be addressed, after the I-140 filing. If you're still in the process and that it doesn't sound like that's going to be completed necessarily during, the I-140 filing timeline, which is okay. When you get to the NVC stage, there's going to be opportunity to disclose that information there. But it sounds like you might just be asking how that affects the I-140. And if the process isn't complete yet, then it wouldn't be, you wouldn't include that on the I-140, but you would need to update that later on during the process.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Michelle, there's a question here in what is happening at the Accra Embassy.
So Accra, yes, there's a huge backlog in Accra. And what's happening is they aren't prioritizing EB3 applications or healthcare workers. And so they aren't scheduling appointments. We're all experiencing it, both AMN International, plus our colleagues in other staffing and direct hire companies. We are in talks with the Department of State and addressing what can be done to open up more EB3 interview slots for nurses, and that's ongoing. So there are many collaborators in that, in discussing what's happening in Accra, but they definitely are an outlier compared to many other embassies. Abu Dhabi is probably another one that's slower, but the rest of them are flowing through as normal as they were before. But it is a top priority for us, and our Ghana nurses know this, that this is a top priority. So please wait and see, and we will keep you updated.
Thank you, Michelle, very much. Maria, we have a question here. I just got my visa approved and scheduled to arrive in August. My dependents are followed to join. Will retrogression affect them?
Well, first of all, congratulations on getting your visa, and that's exciting that you're coming in just a couple short months. Unfortunately, your dependents will be impacted by retrogression. So they take on the same priority date as the principal applicant. So if they're labeled as follow to join, they would not be able to complete their process until your priority date is current again on the Visa Bulletin. So you'll just need to continue monitoring the Visa Bulletin and make sure that when your date becomes current, that's effectively their priority date as well, and then they can move forward with the process to follow to join.
Thank you, Maria. So hopefully that answered your question. Very helpful there. Hannah, we have a question from Pan Pond, so thank you for asking. While waiting for my Visa Bulletin date to become current, can I apply for a travel visa or a K1 visa to see my boyfriend and plan to get married in the US? Is it possible? Can I apply for my green card through marriage while my EB3 is processing?
So this is a great question, and I will start by saying that it's a little complicated. So I would recommend that you reach out to your immigration attorney specifically just to talk about this process. It is possible that you can apply for temporary non-immigrant visas while you have this process ongoing. However, there can be issues that arise when you try to obtain that visa at the consulate or possibly when you enter. So it's something that you would definitely want to navigate and discuss with your immigration attorney specifically. If you're in the U.S. in another non-immigrant status, it is possible that if you have an approved I-140, you could process in the U.S. But again, this is very fact specific, and I would just recommend that you discuss with your immigration attorney just to make sure that you cover all bases. But there is possibility that you could do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hannah. Michelle, we have a question from Chanakan here. The process of CGFNS when I-140 is approved, when does that start?
It can start at any time. You will work with your agency that you're with, but once you have passing English, then you can apply for the visa screen or the healthcare worker cert, depending on who you're using. But it really, as long as it's applied and the file is complete before your English expires, that's all you need. So you have that 2-year window with your English, and as long as you apply and your file is complete within that 2-year period, you can get your visa screen. So timing may be based on many different factors. You would need to talk to your coordinator around that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. There's a question here, and I think we need a little bit more information. Afri, if you are from a different country and in the USA, are you still affected with retrogression? So I think we need a little bit more information to answer that question. So if you can pop it in there. Maria, we've a question from Natalie. I am a Canadian with a TN visa with an approved I-140, and my priority date is March 2024. So how can I go back to Canada?
Yeah, so you'll want to check with your immigration attorney how your I-140 was processed. Hopefully it was filed as a consular case, meaning your I-140 indicates that you are planning to go back to Canada before you obtain your green card. And then you should be able to travel on your TN it is a little bit tricky because the TN, unlike an H-1B or some other work visas, is what we call a single intent, meaning that you are supposed to have the intent to return to Canada before you obtain your green card. So there's some chance that when you're crossing the border, the customs agent or someone, the officer who interviews you at the border asks what your intent is with respect to the I-140 approval, because that, of course, indicates you're planning to move to the U.S. in a more permanent way. So if your I-140 was filed as a consular case, you have the option to say that you're returning to Canada before the green card is issued. So that's kind of a technical thing that you'd want to check with your immigration attorney how your I-140 was filed and processed. And then you should be able to travel on the TN, assuming the I-140 was filed in the appropriate way.
Great. Thank you so much, Maria. Great information there. We have a question from Fayez. Family.
I think Deirdre's having some technical difficulties. Are you okay, Deirdre?
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, the camera went dark for all three of you a little bit ago. So there was a question asked that if entering the U.S. as a refugee from Mexico, can he adjust his status for him and his family? And we'll give that to Hannah.
Sure. So first, I will say that I am not an expert in refugee cases. There are, definitely family-based attorneys that you would want to speak with, and attorneys that specialize with refugee cases. There are certain types of like asylum or TPS where you may have the ability to adjust status. But again, I would recommend that you reach out to an immigration attorney that specializes in that area. I'm not sure if Maria has more experience with that, but I would leave it to an attorney that specializes with those types of cases.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Sorry, I was just going to add, I think we probably need more information because refugee and asylee and TPS that Hannah was mentioning, those all have specific legal definitions. So it would depend on what exactly was applied for and where you are in the process. But we're both, Hannah and I are both more versed in employment-based immigration. So I think her advice is spot on that you should probably reach out to an attorney whose expertise is in refugee or asylee law.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Maria. Michelle, there's a question here on I-140 timelines from Gabriel. As I-140 has been filed over 9 months now, but hasn't received approval from USCIS. How long does it typically take?
Typically, we're seeing around 6 months. So please reach out to your coordinator if it's longer than that. I'm sure they've already reached out to USCIS. But the standard is around 6 months. And yes, there could be a request for evidence, but those are usually responded to pretty quickly, and then it's the application is adjudicated. So I would suggest you reach out to whoever is doing your filing for an update.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. Rakaya, Maria, we'll give this one to you. My priority date is 28th of September, 2022. Last week, the embassy sent me an email to fill out the DS-5535 from meaning that they reach out to my case. Does that mean that my case will remain current or will be affected by retrogression? I'm pregnant. Congratulations, Rakaya. And my due date is on July 28th. What should I do to add my newborn to the process?
Okay, so yeah, there's sort of two questions there. Definitely congratulations on the baby. That's exciting news. So the first question with respect to the DS-5535, unfortunately, it does not mean that your case will remain current. Like Hannah mentioned before, if the embassy has assigned a visa number to you already, you may be eligible for a visa after the dates change on July 1st. But in all likelihood, it's probably a visa number has not yet been assigned to you because they'll have to receive that DS-5535 and process it before they would move ahead with your application. So unfortunately, you probably won't be current again until at least October, maybe later. With respect to adding the baby, assuming that you don't have an interview, if you've either already completed it or you don't have an interview before the baby arrives, there's sort of two different ways that could happen. So if you've already been interviewed and the baby comes, but you haven't yet departed for the U.S., you can just reach out to the embassy and they can issue the baby a visa. You'll have to provide, obviously, a passport and a birth certificate, some other information, but they can issue the visa stamp before you leave for the U.S. If you've not yet been interviewed, you can take the baby with you to your interview and sort of do the same process at the embassy interview there, that they'll add the child onto the case just there at the embassy interview. Again, with some documentation, passport and a birth certificate to show that you're all related, of course, and that you want to have the child added. But it's a pretty easy process. I'd encourage you to reach out to either your AMN case specialist or your immigration attorney when you're ready for one of those two things, just to make sure you do have all the documentation you need to make the process easy and seamless for you.
Great. Thank you, Maria. And congratulations again, Rakaya, on the baby, and hope that that great information that Maria provided helps you. Michelle, we're getting lots of questions about embassies. The one we're getting now is what's happening in Lagos similar to what's happening in Accra?
We don't see the same backlog in Nigeria as we are seeing in Ghana. However, remember they're basing their interviews on your DQ date, your NVC complete date, your documentarily complete date. And in Nigeria, we're sort of seeing they're still in Q1 of 2023. If you were DQ'd in that quarter, they're scheduling those nurses right now. But there sometimes are outliers, or we call them stragglers. So again, please reach out to your specialist or coordinator for an update so that we can look at you on an individual basis.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. Hannah, we have a question from lots and lots of questions coming in. I do want to say we're probably not going to get to every question today. We certainly want to be very respectful of Maria and Hannah's time that they've so graciously joined us today. But the CS is asking, good day from the UK. I'm already DQ'd, recently changed citizenship. What is the implication on my application?
So if you are DQ'd, you're still going to be looking at your country of chargeability in the Visa Bulletin, which is the country you were born in. So the citizenship, though you may have acquired another citizenship, your priority date, you're still going to be looking at your country of chargeability. So if you've been DQ'd, you're going to be waiting until that priority date becomes current. And I'm not sure what your country of chargeability is, but if it's rest of world, you're going to follow that column, or if it's one of the other countries that's specifically listed out, you would follow that column. Perfect.
Thank you, Hannah. Michelle, another one for you. Rhonda is waiting on her I-140 approval, but is planning on visiting the U.S. next month. Is there a problem with that? Will she have a problem entering the U.S. to visit?
Well, I assume you have a tourist visa, or you have a British passport, and you're able to come in that respect. The only issues with the tourist visas are if you have to apply for one. The most that you're likely not to be issued one if you've already applied for an immigrant visa. So, and let me go back to the beginning of that. Did you say that you only have an I-140 filed, or is it approved?
Rhonda is waiting on an approval, not approved yet.
Oh, so she has not applied for an immigrant visa at this stage. So there is no issue with her coming in as long as she's got a visitor visa or has a passport that allows her to enter.
Perfect. Thank you,
Am
Michelle.
I right in that, Maria, Hannah? I should ask for their deference. I don't see an issue with that.
Whether the border officer knows that or not is maybe a different question. But yes, I mean, as long as you can show you have the plan to return back home, that's really the key. That they want to make sure you're not coming to the U.S. and then not returning home after your visit.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Maria, Samena is asking, is it possible to apply for an EB3 from the US if you come to the US faster with an H-1B? Is it safe to apply for H-1B? Lots of questions on H-1B, so I at least wanted to reference one.
Pretzel, as we might say, of questions. Yes, you can transition from an H-1B to an EB3. just briefly, because we haven't mentioned H-1Bs. I'm sure folks are familiar, but the H-1B is a work visa, what we would call a temporary work visa in the U.S., meaning it's for a limited duration of time. It's for a maximum of 6 years. And the position that you're coming to work in the U.S. on an H-1B has to require a bachelor's degree or greater. So for nurses, that's the hardest part, is to find a position that requires a bachelor's degree in nursing, because nursing licenses in the U.S., of course, only require an associate's degree. But there are some employers that have specialized roles or more advanced roles that do require a bachelor's degree. So the H-1B may be an option in that case. So if you entered the U.S. on an H-1B, then you could transition from the H-1B to the EB-3. I think Hannah had mentioned this before, that the I-140 process is basically the same, but you could complete the final stage here inside the U.S. So instead of going to an embassy interview, you would be interviewed by an immigration officer here inside the U.S. And obtain your green card that way. So I think I answered all the questions there, but certainly if there are others, happy to elaborate further.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, getting lots of questions with multiple layers to the question. So definitely very, very thankful to have the experts here today to talk through the somewhat complex questions that we're getting, but great questions from the audience. So thank you. Hannah, we've got a question. If you're coming from Canada, does retrogression still apply? US RN and Canadian RN here.
Yes. So retrogression still applies. If you have an I-140 that's filed, that I-140 filing is reaching USCIS is what's establishing your priority date, and you're still going to be looking at the Visa Bulletin if you don't have another non-immigrant visa that allows you to enter the US, like the TN is most typical for Canadians. So if you're only going through the EB-3 process and you're in Canada, you're still going to have to look at that rest of world category on the Visa Bulletin, and when your priority date becomes current, you'll be able to complete the process at the consulate.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So there's lots of questions on what do we think, will I be visa eligible at this date? And as Maria and Hannah said, we don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but if you remember back to a question that Maria had earlier, expect that it will be 18 to 24 months. So that's a good enough timeline, but we don't have a crystal ball. We'd love to be able to say yes, but we always want to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible with everybody, with the information that we have. But we do these every month, and we may have different updates next month. That what's really important is you just continue to watch for that Visa Bulletin, what's happening with it, any questions that you have, if you have a case specialist, if you have an immigration coordinator, depending on whether you are working with staffing or direct, they absolutely are here to help you and navigate through it. And we've got a lot of experience along with the amazing attorneys that we work with as well. We have time for one more question. I want to be very respectful of the attorney's time. Cindy is asking, I will wrap up with Maria. What happens with the people who had a priority date of 2022 or before who received their embassy date? Does it stay current or is it rescheduled due to retrogression?
Yeah, so this is going to be sort of embassy by embassy. Again, I think Hannah touched on this briefly before, but some embassies, when they schedule your interview, will assign a visa number to you. And so when they're sort of crossing numbers off the list, if you will, of that, that top number that they have available, they've already kind of counted one visa for you. And so you should still go to your interview. And if it's successful, they may then already have a visa number allocated to you and be able to approve your visa. Other embassies don't allocate the visa number until the interview is complete and the visa has been approved. And that's just sort of embassy by embassy. There's no way for us to know, unfortunately, if your case has been allocated a number or not. So if the interview time stays, like if they don't cancel it, you should absolutely attend that interview and continue through the process. If the embassy reaches out and cancels the interview, that's likely why, that they've already used up the number of visas they have available for this year. And unfortunately, you'll have to wait until October 1st or beyond when more visas become available.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for the amazing information. And there are lots of questions that we did not get to today. A lot of them were around Visa Bulletin timelines and what we think may happen. So I think Maria and Hannah gave some great information around that. So I would like again to say thank you very much to Maria and Hannah for your time. We hope that you get to join another immigration Q&A with us very soon. I'm jealous that Chris is in my favorite city of Chicago, having a great time. But thank you both very much for stepping in and helping our audience with all of their questions. Great information, great advice, and thank you again. So,
You can do it.
All right. Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Hannah. Okay, so hope that I know that we did not get to all the questions. We'll do our very best to address all that we can in the comments as we go through. But I did want to reference one recurring question that has been coming up throughout our show today. And that is, will my employer in the US rescind my job offer, or will there be cancellations due to retrogression? It's possible. Hopefully not. But again, in all transparency, we've seen some of this across the industry, and not just in retrogression, but the market right now, the demand market, is that our hospitals are very successful in recruiting US-based nurses. So that's why we always say be open to location. So what I would say to you is that if that is a concern, then staffing may be the option for you. And let me tell you why. So in the unfortunate event that your offer is rescinded for whatever reason, and you are with direct hire, which is totally fine. Again, we're the only organization that offers both. Because that facility is your employer, then your I-140 has to be filed again and reapproved with another sponsor. So with staffing, in the unfortunate event that happens, then we find another placement for you because AMN International is your employer. And so we move that approval. Let's just say you had an offer in North Carolina and it's unfortunately rescinded, but you're interested to go somewhere else. Then you'll work with your recruiter on identifying that next placement, and your process continues. So it's a good opportunity to consider staffing options if that is a concern of yours. But again, we don't know if that's going to happen. Hopefully not to you. But again, there are options out there for you. So what I would encourage everybody to do is to apply to AMN Healthcare /international. We will help navigate this with you. Staffing is a great opportunity for you to get your process started immediately. Bear in mind, you do not need a confirmed placement to file your I-140. That is done once you gather all of the documents that you need to do so. We'll file that for you. And then you've got time. You've got time to research. You've got time to look at the perfect opportunity for you. If something looks good to you, ask questions. Ask your recruiter, what's it like to live there? There are 50 states in the United States, and we hear all the time, like the top 4, I want to live in certain states due to reasons, and maybe you have friends and family there, but just you've always heard that it's a great place to live. I'll again give my example of moving from California to Georgia. I never thought I would do that, but the best decision I've ever made. And not just from the cost of living perspective, but also just it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place to live. And so do your research and let us help you. We are the experts. Again, our recruiters are experts in all 50 states. And whatever you decide, direct our staffing. AMN Healthcare International can help you get there. So we're going to put the handle up again, AMN Healthcare /international, for you to apply. Our recruitment team is on hand, ready and waiting to help you. And so we look forward to working with you and help you realize your American dream. Think of Dream Jobs with D that we just went through, positions in Georgia and Illinois, as well as all over the United States. So we want to be your partner in getting you here to the US. We are the experts. We've been doing this for the longest time in the industry, and again, have both direct and staffing opportunities. So right now, before I come back, I'm going to have Holly join us. And Holly. Hi, Holly.
Good morning, Dee. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Very excited for the Clinical Corner topic this morning. And I know that all of our nurses listening in really look forward to your segment. So over to you, Holly.
Thank you. So for those of you who are new to this segment, I'll just introduce myself really quickly. My name is Holly Musselwhite. I am a nurse of 24 years. And for 23 of those years, I've been working with international healthcare professionals, nurses, PTs, OTs, some speech therapists, and others, med techs, to help them understand and to help me understand the similarities and differences in clinical practice across the globe. So I do come from a family of healthcare professionals, mostly nurses. We have one physician in training, some emergency medical firefighters. So, that's part of, I think it's in my blood. And I know for a lot of you, that's true as well. I was talking to a nurse this morning and she was telling me she's going to be here soon and her daughter's finishing up nursing school. And I thought, that's so neat. You share so much of a bond when you have that in your family. So today's topic is giving and receiving feedback. You're like, I know about that. It's really important, especially in that first 90 days that you're at work, to understand what the value of this is and the nuance involved. So what is feedback? It's communication from another individual that is going to describe their impression of the experience, the product, the performance of something. So the information is often used for performance improvement, but it could also be used to reassure that you're on the right track, that you're doing what you should have done in the right way. So feedback isn't just meant to fix things or improve them. It's also meant to give you an idea of whether you're meeting the expectations of the individual you're working with or you're training with. So why is it important? Well, first of all, none of us are mind readers. So feedback is a gift. Even if it's negative feedback, and this is really hard to swallow sometimes, but even if it's negative, it's a gift because it means you don't have to wonder how you're doing on something. You have the ability to know what the perception is, and from there you can move forward instead of maybe staying at the same point in the process. So as clinicians, we are constantly learning, constantly evolving. It's one of my favorite things about being a nurse is what I learned last year may change this year. And, it really put us to the test during COVID to sort of pivot constantly, but that's a skill that we have. And the more information that we have, the better. The problem is sometimes the feedback that we get is too general and the feedback that we give is too general. If someone comes up to you in the hallway and they say, "How are you doing with orientation?" And you're like, "I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for asking." They go, "Okay, great." And they move on. Now, for them, they may have asked you for feedback. They didn't say, "I'm asking you for feedback," but they've asked you for feedback on how you're doing. You said you were fine. That means you didn't need anything. And now they're moving on and they think they've had a very intentional, meaningful conversation with you. And you're in the back of your mind thinking, I don't know that I am fine. I don't know that I am okay, but I kind of have to be because I'm new and I don't want to make problems and I don't want to have too many questions. Your feedback was elicited. You just didn't maybe realize that that's what was happening. On the flip side, sometimes you get feedback and it's too general. They say you're doing well and you're like, great, I'm doing well. Does that mean you have no areas of opportunity or improvement? Does that mean you've met expectations? Don't assume that's the case. Make sure you get clarity so that the feedback that you request is very specific. Say, is there anything that I could do better? Maybe there's like 2 things I did well that you could tell me about. Maybe there's a couple of things that you would suggest I do better the next time I do this. And that gives you the opportunity to move forward with that gift of feedback. So the other thing I want to highlight really quickly is in the United States in healthcare, we do feedback a little differently sometimes from what people are used to in other countries. It's a cultural thing too. So sometimes we give feedbacks in groups, and you're standing there and you've got other team members, including physicians, who are receiving and giving feedback. We do debriefs and huddles and we exchange feedback. And some people are almost like, I would be ashamed to say that in an open forum. I should be in private, one-to-one, yada, yada. We're not talking about yelling or, becoming in any way like negatively minded, but feedback is information. And so if that information is shared, sometimes we do self-feedback even. During a debrief, we can say, I wish that I had moved quicker to call the physician about this situation. Wait a minute, you're going to admit that you could have done something better? Yeah. And you're doing it in an open forum. Or someone else might say, Holly, I suggest the next time that you're going to do this, maybe you try to do it this way or use this piece of equipment because it's a little easier. And that's not a critique so much as a learning opportunity or someone else's perspective. And so I'm grateful if I can get that information because then I can move forward. But it's a little surprising for people who aren't used to having that type of workplace culture and that type of exchange. So that's it for today's Clinical Corner. I hope the feedback you get and give is high quality. Hope you have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Holly. Always great nuggets from Holly. Feedback, clear is kind, remember? So thank you so much, Holly. Appreciate it. If we can bring Michelle back in, we're going to talk about our upcoming shows. First of all, thank you for joining us today. Hope that we got a lot of your questions answered. Looking forward to our upcoming shows. So June 28th, we have our next Onward and Upward show. And then on July 12th, we have another immigration Q&A. So we'll see if we've got any additional updates from the Visa Bulletin at that point where you'll be able to ask your question. Lafora Talk Show is on June 18th. And the topic there is navigating a new team, some survival tips for you. So hope you're able to join all of our upcoming shows. Just a reminder, AMN Academy every Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you've got NCLEX Monday, first Monday. You've got Dr. Paul there with the review on the third Monday. And then we have our 2 English preparation classes with Niners. So please make sure that you are updating your calendar with all the great events that are coming up. And thank you again so much for joining us today. Apologies that we did not get to all of your questions. In our monthly immigration Q&A, we get so many questions, and we would have to be on for 3 hours in order to get to everything. But hope you enjoyed the show today. I look forward to speaking and meeting with you all again in 2 weeks. To leave you, we're going to replay a video that our colleague, Joy Bensag, Manager of Recruitment, did on our last Onwards and Upwards, and it was about waiting wisely. So, we talked a lot about the Visa Bulletin and retrogression today, and that it would be good to leave you with Joy's words of wisdom. I know that you all know Joy, and she's a great colleague of ours, and look forward to having her on some upcoming shows. But we're going to leave you with Joy's words of wisdom on waiting wisely. And until next time, onwards and upwards.
Take care.
My advice for the nurses is to wait wisely and make use of this time as an opportunity to develop yourself, to gain more experience, to acquire skills and specialization, get certification. This will help you enhance your skills. Most of the hospitals also in the US are looking for nurses who are currently working in bedside. So if you are not in bedside, go back to bedside. For those who are already whose immigration is already in process, and you only take NCLEX, I suggest that um, take your IELTS and get your visa screen ready so that by the time your priority date becomes current, you are all set to go for consulate interview. Your priority date will become current anytime. Also, for those nurses who are planning to go and haven't started the process, planning to haven't started the immigration process, wanted to start but retrogression comes, do not stop. If you have passed NCLEX, send in your application to us through www.amnhealthcare.com/forward international, and we will be happy to assess you to start your journey even during retrogression. Remember, AMN can file for your green card now, can file your green card immediately. And lastly, as an advice, I want the nurses to remain positive and be patient. Do not be sidetracked with the current situation. Do not be sidetracked with retrogression. It is very important to make use of your time during this waiting period or during this retrogression. Um, it is important to remain proactive and be informed and optimistic. These are the characteristics that will help you, that will help our nurses not only manage their time waiting, but this will also prepare your future in the U.S. to be successful in the U.S. And again, um, trust the process, and AMN will always be here to assist you uh, throughout.